Hi guys, thank you for being here. I go by DK, which stands for Diamond Cat. I'd like to start out by thanking you for your interest in my activities. The goal here is to keep you informed, particularly with topics that matter most to you. Of course, this means if you're going to need me to look into something specific, please be sure to contact me via my Facebook page, DK Diamond Cat, or even on Instagram. Now let's get into it. The island of St-Maarten is unique for several reasons. It is one of the most cosmopolitan islands in the Caribbean region, with over 100 nationalities living on its soil. Its singularity comes from its history that can be traced back to the 800s, way before the arrival of the first settlers, namely the Spanish and the Europeans that came during the voyage of Christopher Columbus. According to accounts of our own historian Daniela Jeffrey, the island was a no man's land with the recurrent visits of the Caribs. Of course, they disappeared thanks to the European brutality at the time, and it moved on to having a blend of Europeans and Africans or Afro-descendant people. Nowadays, the island is the fruit of the ownership of two European nations, France and its cousin, the Netherlands. Now, of course, this has been quite a journey for the island. The same historian, the late Daniela Jeffrey, made it her life mission. She ensured we knew who we were, and of course, as she used to put it, she challenged both legal bodies of the island to look at the possibility to stick to the spirit of the Treaty of Concordia, which is celebrated March 23rd every year. Today, a political decision has affected the island of St-Maarten, the friendly control at the French and Dutch borders of St-Maarten. St-Maarteners aren't used to justifying going back and forth on their island. They certainly do not adhere to any notion of cultural separation as they see it as one. But with challenges presented by the COVID-19, political leaders must take control of their country with its limitations. The unfortunate result is a border filtered in such a way that the people feel as if they have lost a piece of themselves. The Treaty of Concordia. Let's get into it. Your girl DK did something very unusual. She put out a video that tackled the situation at the border. Now, when I tackled that that topic, the idea was to, though it was very balanced, the idea was to really show that despite the necessity, perhaps some people argue that it wasn't necessary. This is another conversation. We have guests here today. We're going to talk about it with them. But the point is, what was presented to the population was the necessity to, mitigate the spread of the COVID and so on. So we are in a sanitary crisis. And so the video was really about what is that decision, or how is that decision impacting the St-Maarten psyche? Because as you know, we are one island, separated into administratively it's governed by two nations, two sovereignties, if you will. But in the meantime, we are seeing how this has had an impact on everyone, whether it's your typical business owner, your mother who's sending her child to school on the French side and vice versa, and so forth. So today to discuss it, because now that we are moving on, we are continuing with the lockdown on one side. The northern side is doing something totally different. They are planning their deconfinement, which means they are post-COVID or learning to live with the new COVID reality as of May 11th. This is also symbolizing that the border will remain shut. And I know some of you do not agree with the term shut, mainly the president of the collectivity. If you give him a chance, he will plead on a block that the border is not shut and it's simply a friendly control. Today, we're going to talk about it with our guests. And let me start by introducing the guests and saying good afternoon and introducing everyone to each other. Today, I've invited Alum Pens from activist and member of the Hope Party. Thierry Stephen, who's also an activist and a member of the Hope Party, and also a counterpart, a brother in the land of media, none other than the prince himself, right? So Herbert Martina is also in the house with us. I really want to give you an opportunity to say hi, gentlemen, before we get into it. So good afternoon. Y'all have something in common. You at least have been a candidate at least once on a list. You did
Well,
the
yes. Good afternoon to you, Catherine. Good afternoon to the listeners of this program. I'm happy to be here. Yes, once I was a candidate in 2007, an active member of Hope Party. I'm also a member of 97.1 Union and various other organizations. So really, I'm an activist in different field, trying to get things moving in the proper direction, which is a very big challenge and a very high hill to climb.
Thank you, Philippe. Next up, Mr. Martina.
All right. Thank you so much, DK, for giving me the opportunity. Once I heard this topic, I jumped on this one time. This is something that I think the St. Martin on a whole is supposed to be engaging in a fruitful conversation. Yes, indeed, I was a member of, I started my political career with the PPA and then to the National Alliance, resigned from the National Alliance. Basically, now I'm an anchor person, I'm an anchor man, newscaster, blogger, and
Influencer.
you call me an influencer. But hey, I'm happy to be here. Okay, I am an activist, that's for sure.
So you are no longer not even an active member of the National Alliance Party?
No, I'm not a member of the National Alliance. However, I like to think, and a lot of people have commended me for being impartial in, looking at different views. So I would like to think that's a chip on my shoulder, and I am proud of that.
Thank you.
Looking at views, how it is, and not, wavering in party lines.
Okay. Mr. Pence?
Thank you for having us this afternoon, DK. I look at the video you did last week and a half ago. Very interesting. It shocked me. My name is St-Maarten Lover, a member of the Hope Party and Association, and also active member of the Association of Swaliga United. In an issue like this, it always came to my attention. It came to my attention, so I'm glad to be here so with you guys today.
All right, so let's jump into it, guys. Let's talk about just being a St. Martiner and waking up to the reality of a closed border. How did y'all feel at first when you read it, heard it? Give me a feedback.
But
Like,
personally, of late we get all type of news, so therefore I didn't know what is fake, what is junk. So I step away from all of the news cause we filling up with life of COVID-19 conspiracies and it's not helping us. So I stayed away from it. Nevertheless, when I heard it too much comments, what I do, I went on the Dutch ministry to read. And I read an article, and I believe it was an old article after Irma that they had, saying that they will close on the border. It was a project. And when I was reading, I said, but wait there, if you're closing a border between two states, that's how we have it, can we, no St. Martiners? At least you should have the input of the other party. And I said, but this document is an old document, and physically they can't close what was never there. So I say, you know, we will continue going. And it happened on St-Maarten. What could I say? I'll leave certain things to the others to say.
all right. So were you in shock? Were you what happened?
Definitely I was in shock. Because
Okay.
at the end of the day, this is St-Maarten. We had the issue after Irma, and 2 years after, we have it again. So therefore, we as St. Martiners need to take some drastic measures for that to don't happen. Because we can't say
But
that
alone
the states of France closed.
for the sake of balance, we are, I have to remind the context. The context is a sanitary crisis, a state of emergency, and the spread of a virus that the only way to mitigate it is to basically reduce movement of people. And one of the ways to do so was to shut the border. I mean, you're taking all of that into account, because I'm not sure whether we were all infuriated by it. Are we still, although we're upset, are we still looking at the bigger picture, which is the necessity of it?
Definitely, it was a bold call by the Dutch Prime Minister. But the fact is, can we see how much states in Europe has closed their borders? I don't think they closed the borders. What they was doing, they was just controlling the borders, testing who come in and who come out. So
Let's
why
hear
should it be on a little island like St. Martin?
let's hear from you, Prince.
All right. I looked at it at the perspective of our reality. Basically, we have two European nations who is called our motherland, and I use that term very loosely, and in commas, because when you talk about two nations that control basically everything that we do, I look at the reality of the situation. Okay. Yes, they have an agreement in Europe that supersedes whatever agreement I think that we have here on St. Martin. Not that it's right, I'm not condoning it, but I looked at it in the same perspective that you're talking about. We're trying to mitigate, we're trying to control a virus, and we have a free flowing movement of people. We've lived so for hundreds of years, and here it is, COVID-19, which is an extraordinary situation. So when I looked at it, I expected some kind of control, because it is a pandemic. Okay.
Right, right.
However, I knew that the way how it was handled, and they're saying that they're in collaboration with the two sides, right? I was looking for a more of a consorted effort.
No, it's
Battling this.
so funny you'd say this, because I personally, as DK, I have a little, I'm uneasy with it. The prime minister has said, she mentioned, it's true, there was a little lack of synchronization at one point, but our president on the north, he's like, nope, that's people who's looking to make problems and making it to amplify it and making a problem where there is no problem. No, we've had meetings from the start, we've been together from the start. He played it out as if it was a joint decision.
Now, DK, if I may continue with this, and I don't want to hog the mic, right? But when you look at different governments, and I understand they are privy to information that we just don't have, but when things are coming out in a newspaper, and especially now that I'm a news anchor, that I have to read the news, I have to be abreast, and you see pound for pound where they have been, whether polishing up the fact, whether they are hiding certain stuff, right? And you can see literally there was not enough synchronization. They had their meetings, they had their their plans, but we all know that here we are not running the show. They have to answer to Europe. They have to answer. I'm sorry, I got to. They have to answer to France. Okay. One example was when we wanted to close down the airspaces. The prime minister said in her address, well, we want to, and she listed the countries, and France was one. She said, we want to, because that was a hot spot, France. Right. But that will be a challenge, because the French government wants free flowing of their citizens. And, we can't do that. And we share an international airspace. Now, the next press briefing, nowhere was mentioned France. So I knew that would have been a problem before, because You can't tell Europe, they have their synchronization. And to me, they look at us as a smaller country or smaller territory. And even though we have to live among ourselves, what they say goes, and what we say is secondary. And that's basically what it was. So I felt uneasy knowing that we have decided to work together, and then there was absolutely no true synchronization.
Philippe, go ahead. I'm listening to your take.
Um, Surprise, not really. Knowing was on hand, and knowing what was at risk, I would say that I was rather not surprised at all. Learning this news.
Hmm.
However, I would have to concur in some manner with what Mr. Martina is saying. That there's a lot of things that we are not aware of coming from both sides, and also to I would say the devil is in the details. But what I would like to say is that on our level, there's a lot of I do not know on we our as you stated earlier, the president tried a lot to do a lot of damage control, but there was the principle of the idea was not from our side. It was basically from on the ministry over there, so government over there, so who make the request, which was rightfully right, because if you look at how um, the disease, the COVID-19, started to spread itself on the island. It was first on the French side, then on the other side, on the northern side, then on the southern side of the island, and it spread rather fast on the north, and on the southern side, and it spread on the north side. So, of course, while we was in confinement, or starting our process of being in confinement, the next step was going to be, of course, that you close the border to avoid um, the, the movement of people. So
Yeah.
I would say basically I was not surprised at all, but I think that we are tackling, to me, in my opinion, three different topics. We are tackling the topic of what is historically, what we would call historically the Concordia Treaty implication or the Concordia Treaty effects, and we also talking about a health or sanitary crisis, and we could also say that we are talking also too about cooperation. Cooperation is between French and Dutch. I would have to say that that's why I say that I would concur to a certain degree with what Mr. Martina is saying, because in the organic law that we have the ability to make a certain amount of decision, thus informing, of course, the representation of the state here, which is the prefect,
Right.
and I suppose is the same over there. But there's a number of things that we can do here locally, and I think what is most bothering to everyone is the fact that neither France nor Holland is any either one of them is taken into consideration the Concordia Treaty, and I think that is what to me most infuriating to most of us St-Martiners.
But let me
And
ask you, if you will, and any of you can chime in at any point. But even if let's say in the best case scenario, they first turned to the 1648 Treaty of Concordia, wouldn't the pandemic trump or nullify its weight in that instance?
Permit me, DK, before we get to that question. I was turning around because I was working, doing my homework, doing some researches. In in the case of the French Republic, the Schengen, they didn't close the borders. Okay, they put a strict control to the borders. That one I was looking. I wasn't able to get for the orange country, which is I forget the Dutch. I know what they do, but I was looking how much states in Europe close their borders. We know the recent ones who come in from the east close their borders, which is
Yeah.
Estonia. They close their borders, but France, Italy, who had a heavy, Spain closed their borders. France didn't close their borders. So how is it possible on a little island like St-Maarten they close the borders instead
Now,
of controlling the borders?
no. alum. When France decided to shut down and go pass into confinement, the one of the first thing they've done, they said the Schengen space was doing, it's shut its borders to each other. Now they, because of the exactly the movement that the Schengen space affords, there were controls, and because you still had certain things that were still continuing, but your regular commercial stuff, your regular person that wanted to do their hobbies and move from one area to the next could not go and still cannot go. So certain things were maintained, but even Portugal closed their border with Spain, which they are on the same, in the same country. I mean the same
Um,
peninsula.
I would like to jump in on this topic right here, DK. First of all, we see that St. Maarten, south and northern side, it's 37 square miles, okay? And we know that the gale, just like the gale, doesn't stop at the frontier, just so COVID-19 doesn't stop at the frontier. We had no way of seeing the movement because you can't see COVID-19 moving. We can
Right.
only speculate how it started. However, I believe strictly that COVID-19 was here before it was announced. Okay, but that's a different topic. Um, so putting the Treaty of Concordia into effect, that's why we should have worked together. Not only because of the Treaty of Concordia, because the size of our island, because of the movement, because of our economy. And yes, we have a pandemic, which is a health crisis, but we had to look in the future and know that it would cause an economic crisis. Our island solely depends on tourism. Okay, so they have to look at all aspects. It's as though both sides never envisioned this, and knowing what we passed through in Hurricane Irma, knowing the challenges that we had from Hurricane Irma, a plan should have been set up, a contingency plan already. And I ain't saying leaving out France and the Netherlands. I am saying inviting them to the table. So we have our two sides, northern and southern side, working together. And a counterpart, we have two more people, which is France, a representative, which in our case is Madame Prefet, and also somebody from the Netherlands. And thus, we have a mechanism. It's an extraordinary situation, plain and simple.
So are you saying, Herbert, because when I looked at the topic, I was like, you know what? I felt that as if, okay, the island geographically is a two half a pie, two halves of one pie, right? And what
Mhm.
we did with COVID is we went and we tackled the problem as two halves instead of one whole. And I
Exactly.
and I had an issue with that because I felt like, you know what? That's one of the reasons why when I give the count of how many people had the COVID on St. Maarten, I do not say Dutch side had this amount and French side had this amount. I literally bulk them together and I say the island has that amount. However, if you want to know the details, it means this total for the Dutch side and this other total for the French side. But even if they were doing that, it would not change the fact that perhaps this is all about money. Perhaps it's about how do I tackle a problem, because in the end, it's going to push my budget. I'm going to have to get food for people. I'm going to have to get medical care for people. If I allow so much movement left, right, and south, how am I going to actually get a real chance at fighting COVID? Like, I don't know if our complaints are not coming from an emotional place versus a proactive place where, you know, there are decisions to be made and there is a scientific reality to take into account.
No, DK, allow me to jump in again. You're saying on an emotional level, um, the role of any government or any representative is to take care of their people. All right, we have voted. That's our democratic rights, and our, whether it's legislators, those who have we have entrusted with our vote, and they are there. They have to take care of our well-being. Okay. Now, I'm not laying the fault on government, but let's take, for instance, the international airport of Juliana. Okay. We had to look forward and know that we have to be able to tackle a situation in order for it to spread or get out of control.
Mm.
When we came in, there was no proper controls. People coming from Air France, people coming from KLM, all right, and just walking. And we know that Holland and France had hot spots. Now, had we taken the necessary precautions, we probably want to have this conversation today. And so when they come off, they can easily go on the front side. They can pass through. The borders was free. So there you see that it is a concerted effort. So there's no ifs, no whys or buts about it. When we're looking at this, we have to see what is the free movement of people and know that that is the cause why we are in this predicament today.
Thierry, you wanted to say something?
The reason why I say is because here we have this reaction because we have a Concordia Treaty, because we had a debate, a small debate about a week ago last week in one of our group chat where I asked the question, take away the Concordia Treaty, would there have been a problem with the borders being controlled? Because I would still not say the borders are closed. When borders are closed, there's no way for you to get from one side to the other. And as of today, we can go from one side to the other, not probably the way we would have wanted it to be. And there's where I'm saying there is a problem in how it is being interpreted, how it is being taken look at. Everyone is looking at this from a different spectrum. What I would say is, if you take away the problem of the Concordia Treaty, there is, to me, a logical explanation in them doing what they did at the border, whether it may be interpreted as closed or whether it may be interpreted as filtered border, because I would more interpret it as filtered border. Now, the way it is filtered, of course, none of us could agree with the way it is filtered, but there is a debate, and there's a separate debate. The border closing or the border being filtered is two separate debates. Now,
Philippe,
if we have to take into consideration...
Philippe, before you continue, let me ask you this, because of what you're saying with, our interpretation and the fact that it is more filtered than closed. If you are taking a flight from St-Maarten and you're going to the United States, for instance, you're entering the US, do we agree that there is a closed border to you until you get clearance? But in essence, they are filtering your access, telling you whether or not that border will remain closed to you with the proper documents that you're going to present. And if you don't have the proper document, the border will remain closed to you, then you're going to be returned home. So
yeah.
My question becomes, isn't filtering some kind of closure anyway?
That is what I'm saying. To me, we may not agree on the way the border, the filtering is done. There is no physical border between Prince St-Maarten or St-Maarten North and St-Maarten South. There was a filtering, to me, that was put in place for you to get from one side of the island to the other. You did need proper documentation. There is where my problem is, the type of documentation. As I said on a post I had on Facebook, the question of it being done the way it is, I think, is where the problem is. And that's because, whether we may like it or not, there was no proper previous discussion between either side of the island, and them having France and Holland, whether they want it or not, respect what is traditionally done here. We have people that works on both sides of the island. We have people that have to go for medical reasons from one side of the island to the other. We have the fact that we have businesses that have to be have to get their goods from one side or from the other. Those things have to be taken into consideration, and to my understanding, those things were not taken properly into consideration. With a simple overall of all that goes on, I don't think people would have felt the fact that the borders are being filtered as much as it is today if those measures were taken in place previously. The fact that we are complaining today is because those measures were not really taken into consideration. You have to get a signature from Madam the Prime Minister. You have to get a document signed by Madame la Préfète. I think those are the things that are probably maybe making us more infuriated than anything else. But if you have to take into consideration what is at stake, because we have both things here, and this is what I said, we have to put on a balance whether we want for our existence to be terminated or whether we want the Concordia Treaty to be terminated. And there's where I'm saying there is two debates. Which one do we rather preserve? Because take away the Concordia Treaty, did what both sides put in place, so is it serving a purpose or is it not serving a purpose? Take the Concordia Treaty without the sanitary or the health issue that we have. Closing a filter in the border, is it serving a purpose or not? And the other question is, without or with the situation as it is, what would have happened with border not being filtered or closed? What was at risk? And that's where I'm saying that we have three topic subject that we should tackle, and not only look at it from one standpoint, we should look at it from all the standpoints, and from there draw the necessary conclusion.
Go ahead, Prince, you wanted to interject?
Yeah. The reason why is because, what is the reason that we're closing the border? Closing the border, because we saw it here on the Dutch side as well. They closed the different, districts. They closed the different districts. So from over the hill to Cole Bay, Simpson Bay, they closed it. And then in Phillipsburg side, they had various checks. But without, and I think we have to realize, without mass screening, it was futile because it's just restricting people without taking out the vectors, without really knowing who have this COVID-19 in order to isolate them, proper contact tracing, then it's futile. All you're doing is repressing your people. All you're doing is basically putting measures in place to divide your people. Whereas if both sides, again, had the consortive effort to be able to work together, and then we say, listen, we need screenings as a country. We need proper testing, and this is how we're going to take it through. Extraordinary measures cause for extraordinary actions. So that's why I'm saying the Treaty of Concordia, that is there. We also know that France have their hold on the French side of the island, preferably, as well as Holland, the Netherlands, on the Dutch side. But this is an extraordinary situation where everybody is going through it. So we need to be able to work together, really work together, and then also mass testing. Without mass testing, all of this, we have been on the lockdown for nothing, plain and simple.